Hello, welcome to Doh Athan, a weekly podcast about human rights issues around Myanmar, brought to you by Frontier Myanmar in association with Fondation Hirondelle. This week, we look at the effect of internet shutdowns in Myanmar. People living in the rural countryside especially now have few sources they can turn to for independent, credible information. With the shutdown of many press outlets as well, people are increasingly starved for information. This story was reported by the Mon News Agency.
These days, I have to go to Ye to use the internet. It is far from my village, but then to have good access to the internet in Ye is still difficult for me, because a Wi-Fi hotspot can only be shared between 10 people at best, but usually there are 20 to 30 people using a single Wi-Fi, and I have difficulty accessing it.
That's the voice of an English teacher who lives in a village about 20 miles from the town of Ye in Mon State. He asked that we not use his name. To access the internet, he has to travel to Ye. He says it's the same for his fellow villagers who want to keep in touch with relatives. Others, such as this IT technician, need the internet for their work.
I haven't been able to work well because I can't access the internet like I did before. I have to go to Yi if I want to use the internet. And Wi-Fi is only available at households with fiber internet, so I have to search for these houses and ask for internet access.
He lives about 10 miles outside of Ye. Some villagers have to travel more than 50 miles to get to a nearby town, where internet is not always guaranteed. While some households are happy to share their Wi-Fi, not everyone is. Those who get online can learn about what is happening elsewhere in Myanmar, but a majority of rural residents have completely lost their access to information. The junta's imposed internet restrictions following its February 1st coup have hit these rural areas the hardest. On February 14, without warning, the junta imposed a nightly internet blackout from 1 to 4 a.m. That was later followed by a shutdown of mobile data networks, public Wi-Fi, and non-fiber home Wi-Fi, the forms that most in the countryside depend on. The regime has since lifted the overnight ban, but at a March 23rd press conference, a junta spokesman said it has no plans to lift the other bans, which it blamed on people using social media to incite dissent. Of course, it has also served to limit reporting on the regime's crimes in areas outside of major cities. And it has made people reliant on military-controlled media and propaganda for some information. Fiber-based Wi-Fi only accounts for a small percentage of internet users in Myanmar, where mobile internet has long been the primary source of access for the overwhelming majority of users. The bans have left this resident of Tambu Zayet, about 40 miles south of Malamyan, completely in the dark.
As fiber internet is the only means of using the internet now, it is still possible to use the internet in town. But for the people like us in rural areas, we can do nothing. We can't watch news reports, so we don't know the exact situation of what's happening in the country.
More than 80% of the country's population depended on mobile internet for critical information, business transactions, distance education, socializing, and more. Since the shutdowns, internet traffic in the country has dropped by more than 50%, according to one technician we spoke with.
Before the coup, there were 28 million Facebook users nationwide. That number dropped to just 12 million after the coup. In other words, internet access has declined by half. There is no data about the exact decline in respective regions and states.
The lack of internet access in rural areas, where fiber-based internet is rare, means people have lost their right to access credible information. This is all happening while an infectious pandemic rages in countries along Myanmar's borders, and in the midst of the country's greatest social and political upheaval in decades. Access to independent, reliable information has never been more important. In this vacuum, rumors have flourished. Here's one resident in Myanmar.
Rumors can be spread as a result of the lack of internet. Rumors tend to be exaggerated and can cause irrational fears in people. People find it difficult to verify what is right and what is wrong. It is not good in the long run. From a human rights perspective, it is a violation of human rights.
The junta has choked off information with more than just internet shutdowns. Before the coup, there were 4 local independent newspapers in Mon State. Now only one Mon language journal remains. Its latest issue was published 5 days behind schedule because the junta's nightly curfews have upended its Yangon-based printer's normal operations, according to journal staff. Nearly every national newspaper has also shut down or been forced closed by the junta. Satellite dishes provided access for many to independent broadcast news like Myanmar and the Democratic Voice of Burma.
မင်္ဂလာပါရှင် DVB ရုပ်မြင်သံကြားရဲ့နောက်ဆုံးရသတင်းတွေကိုတင်ဆက်ပေးပါရမယ်
But since the second week of April, the regime has been seizing dishes from homes and blocking signals. On May 4th, it announced that people found with dishes could face up to a year in prison and a $500,000 baht fine under the Television and Video Act. The regime has also targeted, arrested, and charged editors and reporters from both outlets, which it stripped of their licenses early on. A resident in Tambu Zayat said it feels like they've traveled back in time.
It is as if we were back in 2000, and we have to rely on the radio to access news. To watch news on TV, we can no longer watch TVV and Myanmar.
Not everyone can afford a radio, and with demand for them up, prices have risen. Now, residents hope even for limited access.
I want to get back internet access even if it comes with a time limit. Only when we have internet access, we will know the news, and then it will be convenient for us to walk.
We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Doh Athan. This episode was reported by the Mon News Agency. You can listen to the podcast on Frontier's website, frontiermyanmar.net, or on Frontier's Facebook page. You can also find it on Doh Athan's Facebook, SoundCloud, or YouTube pages, and on iTunes. This project to support human rights reporting is a partnership between Frontier Myanmar and Fondation Hirondelle, with the support of the Embassy of the Netherlands in Myanmar and the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. Thanks for staying with us.